Hello everybody, it's the day after Pioneer Day, July 25th, 2009 here in Utah. You know, I've been thinking about a lot of things lately, a lot of different things to post, and I know I say that frequently, but today I'm going to venture into Freemasonry, a little bit of Mormonism. I remember after my grandfather died, I inherited a book called Mormonism and Freemasonry by Stanley Ivins. I remember I didn't actually kind of get that book until after I had gone to the Mormon temple. And I treat these subjects delicately and with respect. But I remember the first time that I went to the Mormon temple, it was in Oakland. I went with my uncle. And as it was quite an experience. I like learning new things, so I enjoyed it. It was pretty wide. I was very wide-eyed. And I remember as we came out in the parking lot, which overlooks the city of Oakland and back towards San Francisco, it's actually a really beautiful view from the Oakland Temple. My uncle saying, who was a bishop of the Mormon Church at the time, he said, "Isn't it amazing, or isn't that wonderful or amazing that Joseph Smith received all that through revelation?" I would consider myself somewhat of a neophyte in Mormonism at the time, so I thought, wow, yeah, that's amazing that all that was revealed to him. Subsequently, I think a few years later, I went on my mission, I got back, and I wanted to learn more, especially about the temple ceremony. And when I inherited this book, I thought, well, good, I want to find out about this relationship between Mormonism and Freemasonry. And the book was okay, but it didn't shed a lot of light on it. So I got into some deeper things and started buying books on Freemasonry. I remember one time I was going to Santa Cruz, and I stopped, I think I was going to Santa Cruz on business. But I stopped by a library in Los Gatos, and I found this book at a used bookstore, Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike, and it had a bunch of signatures in it. And I love old books, and I love going to used bookstores. But bought the book and didn't read it all the way through. I'm a slow reader, but I picked out bits and pieces, and I found it very interesting. And doing more research into Freemasonry, here's another book that I was really happy to find from 1855 called Revelations of a Square by Reverend Oliver. And then I found, Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, and then kind of an older Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, which beautiful set of 2 volumes from 1921. But as I studied it deeper, and I think it's studying the mysteries. Some people say stay away from the mysteries. Maybe it's a childlike curiosity, but I've always wanted to know the mysteries. I've always wanted to know the deepest truths that I could possibly find, and things that are superficial or shallow or not true or trivial do not hold my attention at all. I have no interest. Anyway, I started studying more, and I found out that Joseph Smith was actually a Mason before he introduced the Mormon temple ordinances. In fact, Nauvoo Lodge was the biggest lodge there in Illinois, and a lot of Mormons were Masons, and Joseph Smith became a Master Mason at sight the second day after he went to that lodge. And his brother Hiram was also Mason, and so very interesting stuff. And I know a lot of people, and I know viewers, and I know this is a controversial subject on YouTube. Some people just immediately vilify Masons. Well, there's a lot to it. Goes way back, and some Masons claim to go all the way back to Solomon's Temple, and there's offshoots of this thing. And for instance, I lived in Los Altos a lot of my life, and I never went to the Rosicrucian Museum in San Jose. I'd driven past it, but finally, actually just about a year ago or so, I went to the Rosicrucian Museum in San Jose. And anybody that's around there, it's a beautiful place. I think I'll do a video just on that. Very interesting to get into the Egyptian mysteries. But this does relate to the Constitution, and with this healthcare thing, which I believe is unconstitutional, I'm going to have to make another tape on that. I just kind of somewhat sick of that issue right now. Plus I have to provide specifics because there's a lot of people on YouTube that want specifics, and I will provide them why it is unconstitutional. But back to the Freemasonry thing. Many of the founding fathers were Freemasons. In fact, one of the cool things I did when I was back near Washington, D.C. is, I think it's out in Alexandria, there's a place out there where there's a Masonic museum in it, has a bunch of stuff about George Washington and other founding fathers that were Masons. And so I think to the open mind, instead of just immediately vilifying Masons or Mormons or Rosicrucians or whatever secret societies or mystical origins you might be studying, to maybe have an open mind and just learn about it. But the fact that George Washington was a Mason, right there, I would have an open mind to it, because he's the father of our country, phenomenal individual, phenomenal bravery, phenomenal faith in God, and has affected the destiny of everybody in the United States and many people on this planet. So if you're back in Washington, D.C., I would go visit that lodge. When I was in San Francisco, the museum, there's a huge Masonic lodge there on Nob Hill. I visited that. The part that you can visit, I've never been a Mason, but I did at one point, frankly, have the Mormon temple ceremony memorized. So I learned a lot through that, and then I expanded beyond, studying the Egyptian mysteries, getting and relating to, well, somewhat relates back to Jesus Christ, the Essenes. But I don't box myself in. And I've noticed that sometimes Mormons here in Utah, it's difficult for them to kind of branch out. Whereas Mormons on the coast, I remember, in California, or particularly back on the East Coast at Harvard, I remember going down to the bottom stacks of Widener Library across the river, Charles River, from the business school. This is not easy getting through all the cases at Harvard, but I remember going down there one time and I was amazed at the collection of Mormon books and documents that Harvard possessed. What the gist of this video is that I think it can be beneficial, and actually it's helped me figure things out, to study these supposedly secret societies. I would do it with caution, I do it with discretion, and I would respect. I try to respect all religions and have respect for religions, but a lot can be learned when you find out about George Washington, and it's a kind of double whammy with me being raised Mormon, Joseph Smith, George Washington, and it gets pretty deep. And there's a lot of people, even people that I'm not fans of. I just checked up on the internet, 33rd Degree Mason, and it talks about Bill Clinton. I thought Bill Clinton was charismatic. Personally, I like the guy, but the policy he stood for, I didn't stand for. I won't get into all that, because at least he had a balanced budget for a couple of years, which is a lot more than I could say what's been happening the last 9 years. I would study it. I would learn about it. I would withhold judgment, not immediately freak out. And you will learn more about the mysteries, and you'll go back into Egypt, go back a few thousand years. And I think it can be very profitable to understand the origins of Freemasonry, the origins of the mystic schools, and go back to Solomon's Temple. God bless everybody in their studies of truth. We live in very, very intense times, and it's an intense subject, but I felt that I should broach this subject today. Adios.